Welcome in. Week 11 is in the books. It's the MMQB podcast with Albert Breer. YouTube edition. We're here live on Periscope as we do every week. Hopefully we got the technical end of it taken care of now. My number is still down at 16. Hopefully it rises. And welcome into everybody listening on iTunes or watching on YouTube. As we do every week, we're going to set up my 5 thoughts coming off of the football weekend. And we're actually going to start with a story that isn't strictly NFL. We're going to start with a story that starts at the college level, but will become an NFL story over the next few weeks. And that was the game at the LA Coliseum this weekend between the USC Trojans and the UCLA Bruins. Not many people outside of California care much because USC is on the outskirts of the playoff race, and UCLA is now 5-6. Not many people, that is, except NFL fans who tuned in en masse to watch the two quarterbacks go at it. These are two quarterbacks that we've known about for a while. Josh Rosen's been marked as, and that's the UCLA quarterback, has been marked as a potential number 1 overall pick from the minute he stepped on the field as a true freshman in 2015. Sam Darnold got hot last year, and coming into this year was the presumptive number 1 overall pick. So these are two guys who have been spoken about as potential number 1 picks in the 2018 NFL draft. And we got to see them side by side. And there were 30 NFL scouts in attendance representing 20 teams. I was able to talk to a couple of guys who were there watching Josh Rosen, the UCLA junior, Sam Darnold, the USC redshirt sophomore, go head-to-head. And here's what I got. They were exactly what everyone expected. And so I think we come out of this game and not much has changed. And I know for people who may have been watching those two for the first time, you look at it and you say, wow, like Sam Darnold doesn't look like a classic NFL quarterback. And Josh Rosen, like at least on the surface of it, looks so much better. Well, this is sort of who these guys have been. And when I talk to the guys who've spent a lot of times evaluating them, what I've found is that they didn't learn a whole lot that they didn't already know on Saturday night. So here's what they are, okay? And I'm talking to the fans of, well, I'm going to count them up now. I'd say 11 teams are out of it, right? So that's Cleveland, San Francisco, the Giants, Denver, Chicago, Indianapolis, Arizona, Tampa Bay, Houston, the Jets, and Miami. And of those 11 teams, the Niners, the Bears, the Colts, the Bucks, the Texans, and the Dolphins are probably not going to be in the quarterback market. So I guess I'm speaking specifically to teams that are going to be in shouting distance of the number 1 overall pick, or at least with a chance to trade up to go and get the number 1 overall pick. And that's fans of the Browns, the Giants, the Broncos, the Cardinals, and the Jets, who could be in that position to take a quarterback at the top of the draft. What Sam Darnold was on Saturday night is largely who he's been over the course of his 2 years as the starter at USC. He's had a little bit of a turnover problem that's cropped up here in 2017, which isn't unlike what happened with Jameis Winston his last year at Florida State, where he has a younger team around him. He's trying to do a little bit more, and that can lead to some mistakes. But what we saw on Saturday night was that was who he's been, which is a guy who has a little bit of a funky delivery, and you have to be able to live with that, or you have to believe that you can correct it if you're an NFL team ready to take him. He's a guy who is good at improvising, is good at getting out there outside of the pocket and can make things happen outside the context of a play, and a guy who can also operate efficiently from the pocket. And so we saw all of those things. Is he spectacular? No. But this is why he's considered the safe guy. He got USC in a position to win that game. The numbers weren't off the charts, 17-28, 264, no touchdown passes and an interception, but in the end he wins the game, and he checked the boxes that you wanted to see him check on that stage against the quarterback on the other sideline with all of those NFL teams watching. He basically was who he has been over his first 2 years as a college starter. Now, as for Josh Rosen, I will tell you this. I have heard more sexual references from scouts when you're talking about Josh Rosen than maybe any player I've ever encountered before at any position. I've heard him called gorgeous. I've heard him called pretty. I've heard him called beautiful. Why do the scouts call him that? It's the same reason why everyone who was on Twitter on Saturday night, everybody who watched who hadn't seen him play reacted the way they did. You watch the kid play, and it looks like he was born to throw a football. It looks like that's his natural habitat out there. Now, the problem's been when things go awry on him, when he has to throw off schedule, when he's getting hit, when he's being put in a position where he's got to make a quick decision and everything's muddled around him. But when everything's right around him, the guy looks like he was put on this earth to play quarterback. Now, there are questions. There are the off-field questions with him. There are how important is football to him. There's the entitlement issue. There are a lot of questions with Josh Rosen separate from how he looks when he's throwing a football. But as far as how he looks when he's throwing a football, he's as good as it gets, which is why he was seen as the number 1 overall pick back when he was playing as a true freshman, and why there's always been that feeling with him if he grows up, then he is absolutely worthy of being the first overall pick. Whereas with Darnold, I don't know if the feeling's been that his natural gifts scream number 1 overall pick, but he's great from an intangible standpoint. He's got a way of winning games. He's tough. He can play when things aren't right around him. He can make things happen when things aren't right around him. And so Sam Darnold's the guy who you want to go to war with. He's the guy who's probably the safer pick. Josh Rosen's the guy with the outrageous ceiling. So that's what you've got. And those are probably going to be the first 2 quarterbacks off the board, assuming they declare. It's a sure thing, basically, now that Josh Rosen's coming out, especially now that Jim Mora has been fired at UCLA, and it looks like Chip Kelly could wind up there. And obviously, Josh Rosen isn't going to come back to playing a Chip Kelly offense. And if Sam Darnold comes out, which is no sure thing, he's shut down all draft talk to everybody around him. People inside the USC program, and I've talked to scouts who've been through there, don't know whether or not he's coming back. And so that's an open question. But if they both come out, likely the first 2 quarterbacks picked. And I think the decision for a team at the top of the draft, say you're the Cleveland Browns, if both those guys are available, is going to come down to a matter of preference. And if you feel comfortable with Rosen off the field, and if you feel comfortable with Darnold on the field. Okay, topic number 2 for this week, and we're going to go back to last night. The Seattle Seahawks fall behind almost immediately, 14-0 to the Atlanta Falcons. They're able to battle their way back into the game, and they lose on a 52-yard field goal from Blair Walsh. He misses it short. Look, I'm not going to harp on that. That's a long field goal. Yeah, it's weird that it was short. If you're counting on a 52-yard field goal to win a game, you kind of did it to yourself, okay? Or to tie the game and send it to overtime. Here's what I think is interesting about where Seattle's at. You saw it this week. You saw it the week they played the Texans. This Seattle team is having to learn how to win a different way. Well, what do I mean by that? Okay, Cam Chancellor's hurt. Richard Sherman's hurt. When those guys come back, what are we going to be looking at? Well, we're going to be looking at a 28-year-old Earl Thomas, a 29-year-old Richard Sherman, a 30-year-old Cam Chancellor. I'm sorry, a 30-year-old Richard Sherman, a 30-year-old Cam Chancellor, and a 29-year-old Earl Thomas. That's what it was. So they're getting older. The guys up front are getting a lot older. Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill are well into their 30s now. And they've got some young guys coming through up front, but clearly the defense is getting older. And what that means is that they were leading the league in points allowed every year. They had a way that they were winning games. And you know what? Like now they're going to have to learn to win a different way. And I think you can kind of tie this to what happened with New England when Tom Brady first got there. And I think Russell Wilson's career kind of lines up with Brady's in a certain way too, if you follow me. It's easy to forget in 01 and 03 and 04 when the Patriots won their first 3 championships. Tom Brady wasn't throwing for 300 yards every week. That wasn't who he was. That wasn't who the Patriots were. They'd win games if he threw for 150 yards. I mean, there were people who didn't think he was that great. There was, it's kind of a dirty term when you're talking about a quarterback, but he's referred to as a game manager quite a bit. And what happened? Well, Tom Brady grew. The defense got old. Corey Dillon in the running game, the wheels came off of that. And all of a sudden, by the time they got to 2006, they needed Tom Brady to win games for him. And then they get to 2007, they loaded up, and they were winning games in a completely different way with that intergalactic offense. And so I think that's where Seattle is right now. They have to learn to win games a different way because they can't count on their defense to be what it was on a week-to-week basis over the last 5 years. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You lose a Sherman, you lose a Chancellor, you're going to lose a big part of your identity on that side of the ball, and it's going to be hard to make up for it. And now they're getting into these shootouts. And I'm going to point to one sequence in particular where I thought it stuck out. At least this was, my perception of it. They had the ball with 1:06 left. Russell Wilson had thrown incomplete to Jimmy Graham. Here's a series of plays. On 3rd and 5, Russell Wilson scrambles up the middle to pick up 10 yards in the first down. That's fine, okay? That brings you down to 46 seconds. That's a lot of time to work with if you're trying to get into field goal range. 1st and 10, Atlanta 49, 46 seconds left. Russell Wilson throws inbounds short to Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham is stopped, picks up 5 yards, so that puts them at the 44, 30 seconds left. In the half when they get the next snap off, they go to Wilson goes underneath again, short and inbounds to McKissick, picks up 2 yards. They get bailed out there because an Atlanta player was injured on the play, and then again on the next play. 3rd and 3 from the Atlanta 42. Short, underneath, inbounds to Paul Richardson for 8 yards. And Russell has to hustle the line to stop the clock. So 8 seconds left now. He spikes the ball, tick-tock down to 7 seconds, and they have to kick a 52-yard field goal. It took them 39 seconds to go 15 yards. 39 seconds to go 15 yards. That's where they have to learn to win differently. Their offense has to win them games, and if your offense is going to win you games, you have to perform better in those situations. I'm not saying it's the offense's fault because they haven't been in these situations a lot. But the clock management has to be a lot better than that, and you've got to give your kicker a better shot than they gave Blair Walsh, especially when you know Blair Walsh is shaky to begin with. That's part of the context of who they are right now. So I think the Seahawks, they've still got a real good shot at winning the division. I think Russell Wilson played fairly well on balance last night outside of the ugly interception at the beginning of the game and that clock management issue at the end. But last night was proof that the offense has to be better now with the other guys out on the defensive side of the ball. Number 3, I continue to be impressed with the Saints, and here's why. When you get to the playoffs, it's not necessarily about having an overwhelming strength as it is about the amount of ways that you can beat another team. Because when you get to the playoffs, generally you're going to run into somebody, and probably more than one team, that's capable of taking away what you do best and making you play left-handed. And you got to be able to counterpunch. And so what's great about what the Saints have done this year is you look at the way they've rebuilt the defense. Dennis Allen's done a great job on that side of the ball, drafting the young guys, being able to bring in a Marshawn Lattimore and a Marcus Williams to fortify the secondary has made all the difference in the world. They're a top 10 defense. They draft Ryan Ramczyk. They draft Alvin Kamara. Now all of a sudden they can run the ball with the best of them because they've got a great offensive line and they've got depth behind Mark Ingram at running back. They're top 10 running the ball. They're top 10 defensively. And so now they're suddenly in this position where, again, like I said with Brady, like Brees doesn't have to throw for 300 yards every week anymore for them to win games. And that's a fantastic spot to be in. But it's still good to know that you've got that bullet in the gun when you need it. And what the Saints showed me on Sunday, when they weren't able to control the pace of the game the way they have so many other times this year, when they had a game get away from them a little bit, when some of the gambles they were taking on defense they paid for. Obviously there was the zero blitz that wound up creating the touchdown for Ryan Grant that made it 31-16. They needed Drew Brees to be great at the end of that game. It's the only chance they had. And we saw that bullet's still in the gun for the Saints. Brees winds up 29 of 41, 385 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And down the stretch, again, this is an example of a veteran quarterback who knows how to win a game. And I'm just saying if I'm Russell Wilson, I'm taking notes on the way that the Saints managed the clock, the way that quarterback managed the clock down the stretch of that game. Okay? With 5:58 left, they're down 31-16. Brees gets the ball back. They go 75 yards on 8 plays. and took a little bit over 3 minutes to do that. They get the ball back with 1:53 left. 87 yards, 4 plays, touchdown, game tied. They marched right down the field twice. They managed the clock properly. They gave themselves a shot at that second. They gave themselves a shot at the game time drive because they managed the clock correctly on the first drive, which meant that they didn't even have to try an onside kick. It's that's proper game management. And so you gave yourself that chance. And again, the big thing, we saw the Saints still have that bullet in the chamber, that ability with Drew Brees, where when you really need it, when you really got to have it, you don't need it every week anymore, but when you really got to have it, he still got it. Number 4, so impressed with what the Eagles are doing. So impressed with what the Eagles are doing. And, before the season, I picked them as my quote-unquote surprise team, right? Like, this is the team that's going to jump out of nowhere and really, like, wow, they're really good. And I'm not patting myself. Well, maybe I am a little bit. I'm only patting myself on the back a little bit here, but I don't think that this is solely about the quarterback. And we've made it about the quarterback. They were so solid on the lines of scrimmage. And go back to the offseason, all right? Go back to where we were during the offseason and how desperate teams were to go and find offensive linemen, and how they were overdrafting guys in a year when there weren't any great tackles or guards or centers coming out of college. And they were overpaying guys like Matt Khalil and Riley Reif and all the rest of them on the free agent market. And so the Eagles were strong at a position where a lot of teams were not. And those are those offensive line positions. They were deep at those positions, and they were strong on the defensive front. And you know what? A team like that travels well. And a team like that can withstand certain strengths, maybe not showing up. And I'm not saying Carson Wentz played poorly. He didn't play poorly. But 14-27, barely 50%, 168 yards, good, not great, 2 touchdowns, an interception. He has a 95 rating. They won that game with a running game that went for 15 yards. They won that game with a defense that got after it and sacked Dak Prescott 4 times. They were able to get on top of the Cowboys without their MVP candidate lighting up the scoreboard. And so I thought that was a great sign for the Eagles. That was number 4 for this week. Number 5, Jerry versus Roger. This, to me, is going to be fascinating over the next few weeks because that 6-man compensation committee is going to try to push through a new deal for the commissioner. The last I checked, they were working through estate issues, which is basically, Roger can, start doing some planning for his office for 2019 or 2020 if it's at that stage. You're really kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's at that point. And so do they push this through? Because one thing you have to remember about the process here is that they do have the authority to. When Jerry and the rest of the owners voted through the resolution to authorize that compensation committee to do a new deal with Roger Goodell, that's it. That was it. That was, in essence, the equivalent of reelecting the commissioner. There's no other vote they have to take. They basically said to the compensation committee, it's in your hands now. Do the deal. And I know Jerry wants another vote, but they don't have to vote. And so it's going to be interesting to see the way that deal is finalized. Because in the backdrop of all of this, like with so many other things in the NFL, this is about money and it's about power. That compensation committee, and I've told you guys this in the past, that compensation committee has 6 guys on it, okay? 5 of the 6 guys, Kraft, Mara, Rooney, Hunt, McNair, were also on the Los Angeles committee. Jerry hijacked the Los Angeles process. Jerry took over the Los Angeles process because he felt like he knew it was good for the league. And while that may have worked, and we'll see whether or not, we don't know the final score on the Rams and Chargers in L.A. and the Raiders in Vegas. We're going to have to wait a while to figure out what the final score is there. But Jerry did that. Jerry commandeered that process. Jerry took that process from those 6 guys because he believed that he knew better than everybody else. He knew what was best for the league, and maybe he did. But those are titans of industry too, those 6 guys. Those other 6 guys, those aren't slappies there. And that didn't leave the best taste in their mouth. And so now you've got Jerry trying to do it again. And yes, his attitude may have changed after the Zeke Elliott sanctions. Yes, the anthem situation may have ramped up some of the rhetoric on Jerry's end. But the heart of this, it's about power. And it's about the league being run in a certain way. It's about Jerry saying to the commissioner, I don't work for you, you work for me. It's about those other 6 owners saying, we're sick of you running around calling yourself the ranking owner. This isn't just your league. And so I know there's been some outrageous stuff thrown out there that, he could have the team taken away, or, that Roger wants unlimited use of a private jet and all this different stuff. This is about power at the heart of it. And so that's why it's going to be interesting to see, A, does that 6-man committee try to shove the New Deal through without any sort of approval from the other owners? And they haven't kept the other owners in the dark, but without seeking approval, just maybe informing them, here's what's going on, we're pushing it through. Or do they acquiesce to what Jerry wants, which is more discussion? So that's the first part of it. And then 2, if they do shove it through, does Jerry sue? And so this still it's an unprecedented situation. There's a lot of acrimony in the league. And the backdrop of all of this is that the business model isn't working the same way it was. They're not invincible anymore. They're not invincible the way that they have been. And so you don't have these owners standing down the way they may have stood down in Deflategate, Bountygate, Bullygate, the ref lockout, the domestic violence situations, the cap situations with the Redskins and the Cowboys. And those, all that stuff, those things happen during prosperous years. So if you're an NFL owner, you don't want to get in the way. And we're in a different time now. Okay, I'm going to answer all of your questions up here. I see I got 53 people back there. 55. Can we go up a little bit there? Let's go 55. Okay, I'm going to answer all your questions here for the next, let's say, 5 minutes, and then we'll get out of here. I always appreciate your feedback. You can give me your feedback on Facebook. I'm on my Facebook page. That's at Albert R. Breer. You can get me on Twitter at Albert Breer. And let's go with the questions. What we got? Why did the Bills bench Tyrod? There's a pretty simple answer to that question. The current coaching staff, Sean McDermott, his staff came in for the first 3 or 4 months that they were there. They worked with Doug Whaley, the old GM. The old scouting staff had made a determination on Tyrod Taylor. They felt like he was limited in the intermediate passing game, and there was only so far that the Bills could go with him as the quarterback, which is why they were kicking the tires on Watson and Mahomes and Trubisky before the draft. The current coaching staff, Sean McDermott and crew, they basically communicated to those scouts, we want to get our own assessment on him. We want to get our own read on him. We want to take a shot at this with Tyrod Taylor as our quarterback, which is why they renegotiated the deal. And in late November, the Bills basically came to the determination, and this is the new group, the previous group was right. We've hit our limit with him. Let's go see what we have in Nathan Peterman, and then we're going to come up with a quarterback plan for 2018. Because remember, they've got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 2 third-round picks next year. Now, the problem is that you still have a lot of football left to play. You are still in a playoff race, and you wonder now if all of these moves that they've made to win next year or to build towards next year and beyond are starting to catch up to them. That's what the Darby trade was. That's what the Watkins trade was. That's what the Darius trade was. And that's what ultimately this Tyrod Taylor move is. And so it feels to me at least like Sean McDermott may have to give the ball back to Tyrod Taylor in order to maintain credibility in his locker room, because that was a move that, after you see what Nathan Peterman's putting out there, is going to make basically Peterman's performance is going to make it pretty hard to sell the idea of going forward with him to the other guys in that locker room. More questions. What do you guys got? Will the Browns... Oh, crap. Will the Browns win a game this year? I just dumped water all over my laptop. So I'm going to put that down here. That was awesome, right? Okay, will the Browns win a game this year? I don't have my laptop in front of me. The answer to that question, though, is going to be yes. Everybody got to see that live on Periscope. See, the answer to that question, I think, is going to be yes. They've been competitive. They haven't been all that competent. They've had bad moments, like the moment in Detroit where Deshaun Kaiser calls the audible and time runs off on the half when he tries to sneak it in from 2 yards out. So I think that I think they'll win a game somewhere along the way. But this is probably 1-15 like last year. Are the Vikings for real? Yes, they are for real. They've proven, and this is a rare thing, they can win with a quarterback position being a week-to-week proposition. That's very, very, very difficult to do, and the Vikings deserve a ton of credit for finding a way to pull that off. And tell you what, you look at it now, Case Keenum in there as their quarterback, because they've been able to handle this over the first 10 weeks of the season, they can continue to handle it the way that they've dealt with it, which is we'll see who our quarterback's going to be on a week-to-week basis. And if we've got to go to Teddy Bridgewater, we've got that club in our bag. We can go to Teddy Bridgewater if we want to because the team has shown that it's got the ability to work on a week-to-week basis with whoever the quarterback is. Cowboys or Chargers, I am going to take the Chargers in that game. Any optimism for the Dolphins? I think the Dolphins are still building in the right direction. It's just been a nightmarish year, to lose Ryan Tannehill before the season and everything they've been through, from the hurricane to the situation with the offensive line coach blowing coke and calling strippers. All of that it's led to where they are. I think Adam Gase has done a pretty decent job keeping the whole thing together given the circumstances. Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay. No way is he going to be out of Green Bay. Pittsburgh versus the Pats. I think the Pats are the better team right now, but the Steelers have the higher ceiling. Is Fletcher Cox the best defensive tackle in the NFL right now? He's right there. Do you like rum? Yeah, I like rum. What else we got? I have not been drinking rum, by the way. That is not what caused me to spill water all over my laptop here. And I want to thank my producer, Will Pyle, for being Johnny on the spot and running out and cleaning up my laptop there. Are we all good to go with that? Can I use that again? Do I like jazz? Yeah, I like jazz sometimes. I got to be in the mood. Patriots win the Super Bowl. I think they're the favorite right now. Favorite Thanksgiving food. I actually like the sides. Mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, stuffing. I'm a sides guy. Do the Giants clean house? Yes, I think that the Giants do clean house, which will be unprecedented in my lifetime. It'll be interesting to see because they'll be able to attract some big names on the GM side if they maintain the current structure. So guys like Baltimore's Eric DeCosta, Atlanta's Scott Pioli could wind up being in play. And then the question becomes who goes with those guys as the coach. And I think Josh McDaniels would be one that would be really interesting. Here's a wild card for you, Nick Saban. Who is the MVP? Tom Brady's the MVP. Thoughts on protests affecting the bottom line? I don't think it's affecting the bottom line much. I think it's a small factor, and there are a lot of small factors that are playing into that. Super Bowl predictions, please don't say the Eagles. I think I picked the Seahawks. I can't stick with that, right? Okay, so if you don't want me to say the Eagles, I'd say the Saints are the top contenders to knock them off in the NFC. Let's do 5 more questions. Will Lamar Jackson be a first-round pick? No. I believe Lamar Jackson, when I polled, I think it was 8 executives about the quarterback class, I think Lamar Jackson wound up ranking 7th as an NFL prospect among them. Remember, these are guys who go through those places. The consensus remains that Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen are the top 2. I think Josh Allen will probably be the 3rd quarterback off the board if those 2 come out. And then after him, I think Baker Mayfield would be in play to be the 4th quarterback taken. After that, I think it's wide open. All right, so that was question number 4, or question number 2. Question number 3, Rookie of the Year in the NFL. I think it's Marshawn Lattimore of the New Orleans Saints. He's a little nicked up right now, but he's changed the face of that defense. He's a top 5 player at his position, and that's at one of the more difficult positions for any young player to come in and play. And so Marshawn Lattimore, I think, has changed everything in New Orleans about the way that they play defense. He's my Rookie of the Year regardless of side of the ball. I still think Deshaun Watson would be in the race right now, but obviously the further away we get from his injury, the more difficult it is to name him the Rookie of the Year. You can see the difference he made by the way the Texans are playing right now. Question number 3, will the Jags take a quarterback in 2018? I would watch for the Jaguars to go and pursue a veteran quarterback. They're that type of team. I think they're in a window right now where they've spent money on veteran players, and they should be capable of winning now, and they are capable of winning now. They're 7-3, and so if you're Kirk Cousins, say you look at the situation there and you see a defensive line that's loaded, you see a secondary that's loaded, so that defense should be really, really good going forward. Not bad at linebacker either with Miles Jack and Telvin Smith. You've got an offensive line that I think should continue to improve, in a running game that is one of the best in football. That is an attractive situation for any quarterback. And so I think they can attract a veteran quarterback there. Obviously, because they're in Jacksonville, it's a different dynamic, and you have to have the right player who wants to go and play there. But certainly, from a football standpoint, it's attractive to somebody. Alex Smith is another one. You mentioned it there. Alex Smith is someone who could be in play for the Jacksonville Jaguars if they decide to go to Pat Mahomes next year. Question number 4, Kirk Cousins, landing spot, Broncos, Jags, or Bills. I think the Broncos. Okay, so I think the Broncos would be a possibility. I think the Jags would be a possibility. I think the Bills will be looking more at the rookies. So I would take the Bills out of there and I would throw the Jets in. Question number 5, and I'll count this as question number 4 because it's along the same lines. Why does the Redskins front office hate Kirk Cousins? They don't hate him. They just waited too long on him. And I don't know if they believe that he's an elite quarterback, like a top 5 quarterback, but now they have no choice but to pay him as one or let him walk out the door. One last question. Let's go. What do we got? Is Arians in trouble? We'll finish it there. We'll be talking a lot more about the coaching carousel over the next few weeks. Obviously, it's going to ramp up. We're seeing the movement on the college side. I think Bruce Arians is gone from Arizona after this year. I don't think he'll be fired, though. I think he's going to walk away. I know that for family considerations for him, obviously he's got the health issue. And at the end of last year, I know that he had talked with family about the idea of walking away. I think that this is the year that he pulls the plug, because of the chance that Carson Palmer's gone and you've got to start over at the quarterback position, and you've got a lot of work to do on that roster. It doesn't look like it's a roster. It's going to be in a win-now position in 2018. So I think that hastens his retirement. That's why I really love the Larry Fitzgerald story. Him signing the 1-year extension tells me that they want to have him around to help bridge them to the next era of Cardinals football. Okay, I appreciate you guys all coming out. You can check this out again on iTunes. You can check it out every week on YouTube, or you can check it out right here on Periscope. I want all of your feedback. Go to Facebook, like my Facebook page at Albert R. Breer. Go to my Twitter page at Albert Breer. I want to thank Will Pyle once again for cleaning up my computer, which seems to be in working order, even though I spilled ice water all over the freaking thing. But I appreciate you guys coming out. Any feedback is always welcome. And remember to always, always, always listen to the MMQB 10 Things podcast, the MMQB podcast with Peter King, and this podcast in both forms, both the traditional form and the YouTube form, the MMQB podcast with Albert Breer. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, or Apple Podcasts. Same time next week, we'll be here, and I'll try to keep it clean. Appreciate you guys.